Hey everybody, welcome to Always Bored Never Boring. It's just a quick video today to tie up the sorry saga of HeroScape. I was reluctant to post this video. I am sure it's a sore subject for fans and I feel bad for them, so the last thing they will want is someone poking around in the burnt up remains of their dreams. But there has been an official statement about the future of HeroScape and I thought it was worth sharing. So, as you may know, back at the beginning of October, Avalon Hill started a crowdfunding campaign to bring back HeroScape. I had always heard there was a strong community for the game, so when I covered the campaign going live, I naturally assumed Avalon Hill would easily accumulate the funding total they needed. However, that was not the case. Avalon Hill had set themselves a tough challenge. They needed to pre-sell at least 8,000 units of the game just to start production, and a staggering 16,000 units to unlock the stretch goals they had laid out. As each unit weighed in at a hefty $250, that meant they were looking at $2 million to fund and $4 million for all the stretch goals. When the campaign ended after 45 days, the total number of units sold stood at 4,353, just over half what was needed. And the worst thing is, that isn't even the number of backers. I checked out the Discord towards the end of the campaign and there were a lot of people saying they were backing multiple copies to try to send a message that there was a market for the game. And I don't mean 1 or 2 boxes, there were people backing 9 copies. I saw at least one person talking about backing 16. I'm sure that was the minority. The Discord was very active but really only home to about 15 or 20 regular contributors, but even so, it means there were even less backers than it might at first appear. And I've seen a lot of people give a lot of reasons why they think the campaign failed. I think it's probably a combination of all of them to specific degrees, although I am first to admit I am no expert. This is just my personal take on how things went down. One suggestion was that the HasLab platform wasn't the right venue for crowdfunding a board game. I'm not convinced by that. HeroQuest did incredibly well on HasLab, and that was when HasLab was new and only accessible to North America. Europe weren't able to back HeroQuest, while Australians and Brits had to order through third-party stores. For HeroScape, HasLab was able to take direct orders from North America, the UK and some European territories, and very rich Australians could also get involved, and yet HeroScape couldn't come close to the figures HeroQuest pulled in. Another suggestion was the lack of tiers. HeroScape was an all-or-nothing deal. There was no smaller offering at $100 or $150. You had to jump in both feet at the $250 level. That's a fair point. Although many crowdfunding campaigns have all-in options at $250 or more, that's for the hardcore dedicated supporters. Without a cheaper option, there was no way for anybody new to give the game a test run, and that speaks volumes about who Avalon Hill were marketing to. They made it clear in various communications that this initial offering was something for the fans, that dedicated group of people who had kept HeroScape alive for the last 12 years. This was a campaign for people who already knew and loved HeroScape. And unfortunately, it seems the group they were marketing to wasn't big enough. The HeroScapers are passionate, but I think their group is relatively small. Looking at the figures this campaign drew in, and looking at the same old familiar faces popping up in the Discord conversations, it really looked to me like that core audience, while never lacking heart, might have been lacking numbers. It also didn't help that the miniatures weren't pre-painted. This was a selling point for HeroScape back in the day. You could go into a store and grab a box of toys off the shelf, take them home, empty them onto the battlefield and start playing. Unpainted miniatures, for some people, was a deal breaker. Could Avalon Hill have done pre-paints? Yes and no. There are examples of games with pre-paints that we can look at. The Dungeons & Dragons game Waterdeep Dungeon of the Mad Mage from WizKids retailed for $79.99 and included 42 miniatures, which I believe worked out at 25 unique sculpts. It was possible to buy a premium version of that game with all the miniatures painted for $160. So, pre-painting those 42 miniatures added $80 to the price tag. Admittedly though, this was back in 2018. The world that was is long gone at this point. But we can also look at a forthcoming Dungeons & Dragons game which is currently available to pre-order, Onslaught. It includes 21 pre-painted miniatures, all unique, 3 of which are huge. The full recommended retail price is $140. Third-party stores will be selling it for less. What does this mean? It means that pre-painted miniatures are expensive. It also means that it is possible to make a game with pre-painted miniatures at a viable price point, but you have to be sensible with what you put in the box. Multiples of the same miniature, especially small simple sculpts, are going to work out cheaper to produce than if you include massive unique sculpts. And what does that mean? It means the offering from Avalon Hill for HeroScape was never going to fly with pre-painted miniatures. It was far too generous. There was something like 71 miniatures crammed into that box, and I believe every single one of them was unique. If we assume painting approximately 25 miniatures adds $80 to manufacturing costs, you would be looking at doubling the cost of HeroScape to $500, probably more. And that is by no means a scientific way to work things out, and I am probably still underestimating the final costs a little bit there, but it does give some indication of how much pre-painting the miniatures can add to the price tag of a product. And there were other reasons bandied around too. Some have said there was not enough advertising and not enough effort to get the game into the hands of content creators. Another comment was engagement with backers was separated off into a Discord that many people might not even have been aware of. And it all adds up. And unfortunately, in this case, it adds up to a failure. Do I think HeroScape could have worked? I'm honestly not sure. There's obviously an audience for the product, and it may have had a lot going against it this time. But HeroQuest was hardly the shining example of how to run a crowdfunding campaign, and it did just fine, easily funding and blowing through stretch goals, and it did that with absolutely zero interaction between Avalon Hill and the fans. What HeroQuest did seem to have was a cheaper buy-in and a bigger audience. For a new HeroScape campaign, Avalon Hill could do something about that first point. There's less they can do about that second point unless they can really make the game compelling for new players. But it seems that Avalon Hill aren't going to be rushing to have a second roll of the dice on this one, because on the 15th of November they released a statement to Polygon, and it's bleak reading for fans. They said, as of the deadline for the HeroScape Age of Annihilation Vanguard Edition HasLab project, we are short of the goal needed to start production on this wonderful game. As we said during the campaign, if this project doesn't meet its goal, we won't be able to produce Age of Annihilation. That has not changed. HeroScape as a project will be shelved, and there are no current plans to attempt a resurrection at this time. The Avalon Hill team will refocus our efforts on the exciting games we currently have coming out soon, such as the next HeroQuest game system expansion, Mage of the Mirror, or the upcoming yawning Portal D&D strategy board game. So, that's it, for now at least, and maybe for some time to come. HeroScape has been shelved indefinitely. Maybe HeroScape just needs a few more years for the nostalgia to kick in. HeroQuest fans had to wait over 30 years for the return of their beloved classic. I hope for HeroScape fans it won't be another 18 years before they have the chance to enjoy a shiny new edition of their favourite game. That's it from me for now. Thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please consider pressing the like button. If you really enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing if you don't already do so, and hopefully I will see you all again very soon. Bye bye everyone. Bye bye.